Okay, so we have a session about the situation of the internet in Oman and in the region. And our first speaker is a former colleague of mine, Amreesh Phokeer from Internet Society, who will be talking about the indexing how the internet is in the country, right? In the Middle East.
Hi everyone, my name is Amreesh and I work for the Internet Society. Real pleasure for me to be here in Oman first time. Was really pleased by this warm welcome and the good food especially. All right, so today I'm going to talk about maybe a less technical story, but using technical data and how at the Internet Society we are actually indexing or measuring the health of the internet in different places of the world, and in this case in the Middle East. So let me first talk about a platform that we have that is called the Internet Society Pulse platform. So if you go on pulse.internetsociety.org, you will have a dashboard of different metrics and different things that we measure. So the idea is actually to give you an overall sense of the health of the internet. For this to happen, we need to rely on a lot of what we call trusted data partners. As you can see here, you might even recognize yourself. We get data from third-party data sources that we put together and then tell a story about how things are. So we acknowledge those data partners because without them, we wouldn't be able to do our job. So what is Pulse tracking? Pulse is tracking different things. And also we are talking to different audience. But I would say our main audience is less of the technical people, but more the policy people, the regulators, the ministries, because they need to have a sense of what's the situation on the ground and how eventually to improve things. We track shutdowns. As you know, shutdowns are bad for the internet. We have cases where countries during exams, national exams, they would shut down the internet. But perhaps when doing this, governments, they don't know that this might have an economic impact. So we have a tool called the net loss tool, which we built using a lot of economic indicators that can actually give a rough estimate of how much money a country might be losing on a daily basis if there is an internet shutdown. We track the adoption of key technologies such as DNSSEC, RPKI, and other things because these are important for the hygiene of the internet. We look at concentration. Is the market concentrated? Because as you know, concentration is bad for resilience. And talking about resilience, which I will do a deeper dive today, we have built a framework that put together different things to be able to help you get an idea of how resilient your network is. We also presented on day zero the IXP tracker, which is a tool that gives information about IXPs and the evolution of IXPs in terms of whether it is growth of membership or growth in terms of capacity. We are currently pulling the data from PeeringDB, but we are eventually going to integrate other sources as Hannah presented yesterday. We will eventually improve that. And then we also have the popular content locality tracker on Pulse, which also Hannah presented. So today, I'm going to talk about resilience. So resilience, needless to say that any network, any country can be subject to outages. As you can see here from those press cuttings, there have been cable cuts in the Red Sea in March. Some countries, unfortunately, shutting down the internet. Cable cut hitting users, for example, in the UAE. So on and so forth. And obviously, this will have economic impact. Businesses cannot do their transactions. People cannot buy goods or services. So it definitely has an economic impact. This is data coming from down detector and nuclear, looking at how many people were affected. So for example, there was a Microsoft outage in March and a Facebook outage also in March, where people in the Middle East were affected. So these are real, and people are actually being affected. They do not have access to the internet. I remember myself, I was in South Africa in March, and there was a cable cut on the west coast of Africa where there was an undersea landslide. I was at the bank, and we couldn't do any transaction. Even the phone system of the bank stopped working. So I asked myself, how am I am in South Africa. Cable cut happened in near the coast of Côte d'Ivoire, and the phone system of the bank wasn't working. So that's terrible. So this is why we decided to start talking about resilience. And of course, resilience is, I would say, quite abstract topic or abstract subject. And if we need to have like a holistic picture of the resilience or the resiliency situation in a country, we have to look at different aspects. I would say it's very much like the human body. The human body, if you want to talk about the health of the human body, you will look at the mind, the spirit, the heart, and the body and everything. So you need to get indicators from these different parts of the human body or aspects of the human body for you to know whether you're in good health. I'm sure after a week in Oman eating this good food, I'll have a lot of red flags in terms of high sugar levels and everything. But anyway, we built a framework called the Internet Resilience Index, which decomposes resilience into 4 main pillars called infrastructure. We look at the physical and enabling infrastructure available in a country. We look at performance. We look at security. As you know, we need good hygiene. And perhaps a less technical side of resiliency is the market readiness. How is your market behaving? Is it a highly concentrated market? Is it an providing affordable services to the end users? So on and so forth. And for this, we had to put together a certain number of indicators. So in this case, we are currently around 30 different indicators looking at different aspects of resiliency. So I talked about performance, so we are looking at bandwidth, but also jitter, latency to some services, but also the stability over time of those, of the performance. We look at adoption of IPv6, for example. In the market readiness section, we look at the cable ecosystem. Do you have many cable landing stations in your country, or do you have only one? We look at manners. So manners is about routing security. We put together a few score. For example, do you have OPKI coverage? Are you doing ROV validation? So we put together everything in the score called the manner score, which gives us an idea of what is the situation in terms of routing. So put together, we have this framework. And of course, how did we select those indicators? We have a few criteria. Relevance, of course, it needs to tell a story about resilience. It needs to be accurate. We need to make sure that it is using the correct techniques, or people have trust in those third-party data sources, and not use any, data source that is coming from untrusted sources. It needs to cover as many countries as possible and fresh, so producing data on a yearly basis, at most on a yearly basis. And also, there need to be continuity. Like, we don't want an indicator to disappear in a couple of months. We want it to stand there and to continue providing us this information. Otherwise, our framework will change too often, and this might not be so good for sustainability. So put together, we have what we call the Pulse Internet Resilience Index. As you can see in dark blue are the countries with the highest resilience, and the lighter colors are the countries where you have less resilience. And we circled in yellow those countries which we would want to look at the Internet Society. These are the least landlocked, least developed countries. And as you can see, their resilience is pretty low. So there are a lot of room for improvement for these countries, and this is going to be our focus in the next couple of years. So there's an interesting thing that I looked at recently, so the number of internet outages and the Internet Resilience Index. So indeed, we have seen that countries with a lower number of outages generally have a higher internet resilience, and countries with a lower Internet Resilience Index has generally a higher number of outages. So this gives us confidence that, okay, this index is pretty robust in terms of showing, the impact eventually. And if we need to distribute those, the resiliency into four categories, namely here, high resiliency, high middle resiliency, lower middle resiliency, and low resiliency. This is the distribution we have in terms of countries, so the dots are countries. As you can see, there is quite a big group of countries in the high middle and lower middle, and a few highly resilient countries or a few very low resilient countries. So looking at the Middle East, this is the high middle resiliency group. This is where most of the countries in the GCC are found. Saudi Arabia leading the game here, followed by Bahrain, UAE, Kuwait, Qatar, Oman, and Jordan. So the different categories, it starts with the infrastructure part, then the performance part, security, and then market readiness. So you can see on the graph the distribution of where, for example, Saudi Arabia is leading. Saudi Arabia performance or security in Saudi Arabia is quite good as compared to, for example, their market readiness. But overall, put together, they are doing a good job, I would say. In the lower middle resiliency tier, so these are the other countries that are in this group, starting with Morocco, which has the highest, and Djibouti, which has the lowest. And the low resiliency countries, these low resiliency countries, we have Yemen and Syria. They are in the low resiliency group, so it means that they are quite low, they are scoring quite low on many of those indicators. This is why they are in this category. We are also tracking this information over time. So this is, for example, for Oman. We have data from 2019 till 2023. So we are constantly refreshing our data, so soon we will also release the data for this year. But basically, as you can see, for Oman, the index has been pretty flat, so there hasn't been any increase or decrease. So this shows stability, which is good. Some indicators we see a little bit of change. For example, infrastructure, it went a little bit down. It doesn't mean that there is a degradation in terms of infrastructure, because this ranking is based on the other countries as well. So it means that perhaps other countries are doing good. So which means that the infrastructure score of Oman will go down a little bit. But we see here, for example, security. The security of Oman is increasing, which is a good signal. On Pulse, we also have what we call the country report, which I would encourage you to go and see. So the country report gives you more information, or more, I would say, the raw information about the situation in your country. The index is highly aggregated. It is also normalized, so you will not find the raw information. But if you want to find the raw information, you could use the country report, or you can also use our API that will provide you the data in raw format, but also the index as well. So on the country report, we have 3 categories. This one is about how open your internet ecosystem is. So we talk about, for example, the internet penetration, the number of internet shutdowns that happen, what is your resilience score, do you see diversity in terms of your provider, your transit provider, how many IXPs do you have, is it a concentrated market or not? Then you have some information about the growth of your network. Is it growing over time in terms of the number of ASNs assigned, IPv4 addresses assigned, etc. We look at IPv6 adoption, as you can see here. And also, we give some indication about how many networks are appearing. And finally, we have the secure and trustworthy internet component, where you could see some information. So here, the thing which is quite striking is .om is not signed. So if .om is signed, this will help increase your DNS resilience score on the index and eventually have a good impact on your overall score and also your ranking eventually. So outages are real. So these are two big cases that happened a couple of years ago. Rogers outage in Canada, where because of some BGP filtering issues, 25% of the users in Canada couldn't access the internet. Some services, some critical services such as 911 couldn't be accessed. So it had terrible impact on the people. Transport system were down. So, and in Canada, you would see it's a very developed market, but there are some red indicators, indicators which are in the red. For example, there is a high concentration in terms of retail services, those providing retail access to the end users. In Australia, it's also the case. There was an issue with BGP filtering, and more than 30% of users couldn't access the internet for quite a long time. And this had also quite a big impact and quite generated some loss in terms of revenue for businesses. So it's not if, but when. And I hope operators here in the room will not be on the list by taking care of your network, by taking care of your internet health. And this, over the week and yesterday as well, we talk about different practices, whether it is for routing, whether it is for DNS. There are things that need to be put in place so that things like that do not happen. So our role, our message here today is that we all have a role to play, and we are all advocating for a healthy internet. So also help us collect data, help us with the data. For example, if you think things on the index which is not super accurate, we would very much love to hear from you to improve our data sets and give you a more accurate picture. If you want to have more information, there is the methodology of the Internet Resilience Index, which you can view. And if you have questions or suggestions, please feel free to hit us an email. We'll be happy to have a chat with you. Thank you very much for your attention.
Hey Amreesh, I'm Natalie Treneman working for M6. Thank you for your presentation, it was really insightful. I do have two questions about the methodology that you used. First question is, the data sets on resilience are maximum 2 years old, you said. And that is because sometimes not much changes. But 2 years in terms of internet is a lot. You can see that, for example, with RPKI ROA creation, where all of a sudden 2 years is a long time. Yeah. Why did you decide on the 2 year instead of, for example, 1 year?
The data sets which are 2 years old, these are data sets usually produced by, for example, the ITU or the World Bank. For example, they would do census, let's say on internet penetration every 2 years. So we can only rely on that because we do not have any other information. But data on the internet, whether it is DNS routing, these are IPv6 adoption, these are fresh data. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for that. The other one is you have this waging model, and one of the factors is market readiness, right? And I was wondering if you weigh that the same weight essentially as performance or security, or do you have different thresholds?
Good question. So the 4 pillars I presented, so infrastructure, performance, security, and market readiness, they all have the same weight. But even the indicators within those pillars can also be weighted, and in some cases they have different weights. And this is based on the importance we want to give them. For example, we would give higher importance to existing infrastructure or enabling infrastructure than performance, for example, because you need infrastructure before having performance. So we play a little bit with that to give like a, I would say, semi-real story. Yeah.
So you don't weigh market readiness heavier, so to say, than performance
it's all
or
equal.
security? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay, we don't seem to have remaining questions, so thank you, Amreesh. Thank you very much. Let's give him an applause.